अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय। अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय। अवतार मेहर बाबा की जय। We are reading Lord Meher daily, the biography of the Avatar of the Age Meher Baba, Volume 1, written by Bhav Kalchari. And we are starting from page number 62, and we are reading about Upasani Maharaj. So there was no one else like him, Sai Baba declared. His value only I know. His merit is such that if the whole world were put on one side and he's on the other, he would be greater. It was in year 1890, outside Nasik, India, a seeker named Kashinath despaired, and in his sorrow and hopelessness, he decided to fast to death. He bypassed the city and ventured into the jungle, where he came across a mountain of caves. This was the Borogad Mountains of precipitous rock in the middle of the jungle, and was an ideal place to await his death, since there was no one else around and no food or water anywhere nearby. Kashinath entered a small cave and spent 2 days and nights without food, water, or sleeping, longing for death, challenging it to come. And if death did not come soon, he would throw himself off the precipice. On the third day, he wondered why he was wasting his life calling for death instead of thinking of God. He silently began repeating God's name for days. Kashinath gradually became absorbed in his divine contemplation of God and forgot everything: his despair, his family, his life in the world. He entered into a deep samadhi and remained in a state of bliss and enchantment for several months. But Kashinath could not spend the rest of his life thus absorbed. Much more was destined for this young man of 20 then to remain unknown in an isolated cave, entranced in divine contemplation. Kashinath was awakened out of his samadhi by a man's figure standing over him. He was startled when the figure grabbed him and apparently ripped his skin from his body. Soon after, the figure disappeared. The frightening apparition brought Kashinath back to bodily consciousness. He touched his body and was relieved to find his skin intact. Kashinath's next physical sensation was of intense thirst. He felt as if his tongue was being pulled out of his mouth. He felt he was about to die of thirst, but he could not cry out, and even if he could, who would hear him in his remote place? It was a desolate cave with no water anywhere. Even if there was, the whole body was so stiff from the 9 months of sitting in one position that he could not move. Dying of thirst, his mind passed into semi consciousness, and in another vision, he saw himself die. The death he had sought when he entered the cave was now imminent. He felt resigned, consoled that soon he would be united with the Spirit of God. But someone was watching over this young man. It was the fakir of Shirdi, Sai Baba, who was just 100 miles away. Sai would not let Kashinath die in this way, and the fakir had other plans. He intended to kill Kashinath in a different fashion while keeping him alive. While Kashinath lay unconscious in the cave, Sai Baba sent his Abdal's spiritual agents, who formed dark clouds and sent torrents of rain down on the mountain. Water, streams of life giving water, flowed into the cave when Kashinath lay dying and collected into a pool beside him. Awakened by the crashing thunder and flashes of lightning, Kashinath found water touching his lips and gently dripping to his tongue. He lay still, letting the water revive his skeletal body. O Kashinath, you wished to die, and yet you drank the water. Why did you drink? You didn't remember you wanted to die? You had to drink. You had to survive. Someone made you drink, and you scooped up handful after handful of water. At last your thirst was quenched. The fakir of Shirdi was watching over you, Sai, whose treasure of love you are destined to inherit, but you did not know it then. Try as he might, Kashinath would not die of their own will. Who was this determined Hindu youth? He was the one later named Upasni Maharaj, king of the yogis. Although the birth was normal, his life was not. The boy was born a Hindu in a Brahmin family of priests in the village of Satana, India, in the district of Nasik, on May 15, 1870. His father's name was Govind Shastri and his mother's Rukmini. His grandfather, Gopal Shastri, was a learned Pandit, Brahmin scholar, with a saintly temperament. Before his death, the grandfather was to renounce his family and the world and became a sannyasi in search of God, not knowing that the divinity of God would later manifest in his grandson Kashinath. Kashinath was the second of the five brothers, and from childhood his nature was quite different from that of his siblings. The boy hated school and barely managed to reach the third grade. He was a problem to his parents, but his grandfather liked him very much and taught him the Shastras, Brahmin scriptures, where he learned with keen interest, although he despised his school lessons as well as lessons from the temple priests. At this time, there was an old Hindu woman living in Satana who was considered peculiar. Despite being a widow, she continued to wear an array of bangles on her arms, contrary to the custom of the day, which dictated that once the husband died, a woman broke her bangles and did not replace them. People would ridicule the old woman, calling her the sorceress, and children would also harass her, calling her the old witch. Kashinath himself was disrespectful and mischievous, taunting the old woman often, saying as she passed, "Old witch, why did you keep your bangles on? Don't you know your husband is dead?" Being his ill Besides his ill temper, the boy was also a problem to his parents because he was often sick. Kashinath suffered from severe stomach aches throughout his childhood, and despite various medical treatments, his digestion did not improve. The boy's health became critical, and the doctors diagnosed him as incurable with no hope for survival. His parents were not completely resigned to the boy's imminent death, and after the doctor's treatments failed, Kashinath was taken to the sorceress. But when the old woman saw him, she became angry and cursed him, saying, "Let him die. He has troubled me often, and because of this he is suffering. He should die." Kashinath was overcome with fear and asked the old woman's forgiveness. She scolded him harshly, then warned, "If you expect to get well, you must visit me every day." Kashinath promised to do so, and he began visiting her at her home, where both would sit alone in a closed room. By obeying the old woman's instructions, Kashinath was gradually freed of his chronic ailments, but another pain arose in him, the pain of burning fire that had been lit in his heart. While keeping the old woman's company, he soon discovered that she was no witch or sorceress, but a true lover of God. By her influence, the boy's personality changed as an intense aversion for worldly things overcame him. He withdrew within himself, and his heart set out on a secret search. The boy refused to go to school and kept himself aloof, venturing into the forest to meditate. Once, when he was 10 years old, his uncle Damodar found him weeping in his room and asked the reason. Kashinath, after much pressing, said, "It makes me sad to think I have to live off your labor. I do nothing. I don't make any contribution towards the family's upkeep." His uncle was deeply moved by the young boy's sentiments and tried to console him, saying, "It is our duty to look after our children and support them until they have grown up and are ready for life." For a year, Kashinath lived in Dhulai, where his parents, but the idea that he was a burden to them always bit his conscience. The boy became depressed and made up his mind to leave home, to lead the life of an itinerant, but this was not destined to happen for several years. Although Kashinath's heart revolted against worldly attachments, his family made preparations for his weddings. Against his will, Kashinath had to accede to their wish, and he was married to a young Hindu girl named Durga. At that time, according to custom, the newly married husband and wife were usually young. Kashinath was 14 and Durga was only 8. Despondent, Kashinath had no interest in establishing himself in a business or household and paid little attention to his wife. He was having powerful inner experiences. Someone who whom he did not know was singing in his heart. He was eager to know whose voice he heard and have a glimpse of the singer, but he was terribly confused. In the bewilderment of the prompting of his heart, one day he left his wife and home without saying goodbye, and he wandered on foot of on foot to Nasik. Somehow, Kashinath's grandfather discovered his whereabouts and wrote to him that his mother was seriously ill, pleading with him to return, and he was forced to oblige. Then, 1 year after his marriage, his child bride died. Soon after, his family again prevailed upon him to agree to a second marriage. In 1985, Kashinath married another Hindu girl, but leading a worldly life was still intolerable for him. He paid little attention to his second wife and was restless with the echo of the song constantly ringing in his heart. Still bewildered by what he was feeling, by what he was hearing, again he wandered away from home. But his search found no one, and although his heart questioned, "Who is singing to me?" there was no reply. Kashinath had no answer to what he was experiencing, and so he returned to his home. The experiences increased in their intensity, and thus his mental suffering intensified. The painful question in his heart was repeated and repeated over and over again until it left a scar. Who's singing? Who's singing? The question tore at his mind, increasing his restlessness. The painful restlessness itself tore at him. You hear the question, don't you? Don't you? Why not? Then try to find the answer. Why don't you try? But the youth was so bewildered he did not know what was happening to him. How can I find the answer? There should be. Where should I go? Who can help me? Finally, Kashinath could not tolerate any more, and on the pretext of going out to study a medical book, he abandoned his wife and home. Wandering, the confused youth searched for the answer wherever he went. Infinite God is beyond man's grasp. Where he was so difficult to grasp, how could Kashinath's mind be so agitated? God had grasped the young man's heart, but Kashinath's mind could not grasp him. Kashinath wandered to Pune, but he became dissatisfied there, and he continued walking Kalyan to a town near Bombay. It was while he was on his way back to Satana from Kalyan that he was overcome with despair. It was then that he entered the thick forest and came across the precipitous mountain called by the villagers Borgad, which lies 10 miles beyond Nasik. It was then that death seemed the only solution. Young Kashinath was intent on killing himself, either by fasting to death or by throwing himself off a precipice. His turmoil was profound. He was truly desperate for God. Although he remained inside the cave for 9 months without food or water, he did not die. When he drank from the rain puddles and survived, Kashinath, who had become a live skeleton, was so emaciated that he was too weak even to walk down the mountain. He crawled out of the cave and cried, "Oh God, you are the singer, but where are you? You wanted me to find you, but I have no strength left to come to you." At the base of the Bhogad mountain was a small village called Gavalwadi, where the local villagers saw Kashinath crawling down the mountain. They were moved by this debilitated condition and rescued him, nursing him back to health. after a month, Kashinath returned to his home in Satana. It was in it was the 22nd of July 1890, and Kashinath was 20 years old. Within a year after his return to Satana, Kashinath's father and grandfather and then second wife all died. He soon left home again, since he was aware that his mother would force a third marriage upon him. Kashinath wondered for some time before returning to Satana. He had regained his normal weight and strength, but his eyes showed the same uneasiness and distress. The singer was now singing more clearly than ever in his heart, but he was still unseen. Kashinath cried out, "O singer, what is your meaning? If you wish to remain hidden, why do you sing? Your song is making me mad." There was still a family link left for Kashinath to break, however. Without this karmic snapping, how could the singer reveal the splendor of his face? Once again, Kashinath's relatives arranged a third marriage for him, but his glazed eyes were still searching for the singer, and the unseen voice would not allow him to rest. The song was constantly heard, and its music was breaking Kashinath's heart. For years, his spiritual suffering was secret. The inner state of Kashinath was unknown to others. Internally, he was terribly restless and in pain. The singer would not leave him alone. The song would not stop. Sometimes he would behave in a seemingly bizarre manner, and when he was in this disturbed condition, his wife would consent to his every desire, thus patiently bearing with him, trying to ease his distress. As with the ways of the world, as one gains success, one often thinks of acquiring property, and Kashinath was no exception. At Gwalior, there was an opportunity for acquiring uncultivated land if one agreed to farm it. During 1906, Kashinath invested thousands of rupees and acquired hundreds of acres, spending much time there. He became a mujawar, an estate landlord. Kashinath's situation changed, however, and within 2 years he became entangled in numerous lawsuits, resulting in the loss of his land, his money, and his reputation. His health also suffered. Bankrupt, Kashinath returned to Amravati in 1908 to re-establish his medical practice, but he had lost all interest. He was disillusioned, and his inner longing caused him to become desperate. On page 69, we see a picture of Kashinath Govind Shastri in Amravati, where he was an Ayurvedic physician from 1895 to 1908, where he became a famous healer in the field of Ayurveda. The painted mark on his forehead is of Lord Vishnu, typical of high Brahmins. Finally, with his wife's consent, Kashinath gave up his medical practice and closed his dispensary, and on April 10th, 1910, both he and his wife set out on pilgrimage. During their travels, the couple went to Omkareshwar near Mandhatta in northern India, a Hindu place of pilgrimage along the sacred Narmada River. One day, in the nearby secluded forest, while Kashinath was absorbed in deep concentration, his body received a powerful shock and he fainted. His breathing stopped and he appeared to be dead. Kashinath's wife was frightened and sprinkled water on his body. After a while, he regained consciousness, but though his body had withstood the inexperience of occult power, he suffered difficulty in breathing. The song's echo intensified, and the voice asked, "O Kashinath, who is singing? Who is singing in your heart?" But still bewildered, Kashinath did not know. He became even more restless to find the answer. Now, with his constant grasping for breath, it was as if he was dying. With difficulty, Kashinath and his wife left Omkareshwar and journeyed to Nagpur, where he was treated for his respiratory obstruction. But the medicine had no positive effect. Kashinath's intense longing to see the singer was so deep that this very restlessness was the internal cause of his hampered breathing. No doctor could understand this. Kashinath wept out of longing. "O singer, why are you so cruel? Is it forbidden to show me your face? Why do you burn me in this fire of separation? My mind is reduced to ashes in the flames of your love. Won't you now reveal your face in my ashes? Sadguru Narayan Maharaj was visiting Nagpur, and Kashinath was drawn to him to have his darshan. The program had not yet begun, and many people were waiting in line. Kashinath joined them, but when the darshan was about to begin, Narayan beckoned one of his disciples to bring Kashinath to him. Kashinath fell at Narayan Maharaj's feet. After he rose, Narayan removed a flower garland from his neck and put it around Kashinath before the waiting congregation of thousands. Kashinath accepted the garland as a gift of Narayan's grace and then quietly slipped away from the crowd. Had the singer been formed? Kashinath, however, had not seen his face. Kashinath had felt the singer's touch, but the echo of the song became louder. The overpowering melody was destroying him while his tears were dissolved in the fair of love. Kashinath and his wife then journeyed to Dholia and stayed with his brother Bal Krishna Rao. Kashinath's respiratory ailment worsened and became so difficult to breathe. He resolved that if further treatment failed, he would commit suicide. With suicidal thoughts plaguing his mind, he left Dholia alone during April 1911. However, his disease could only be eliminated when it assumed infinite proportions. What could bewildered Kashinath do until then? He would neither breathe nor stop breathing. Alas, the sort of life was this. The ocean of fire is to be crossed, but at the same time, one has to drown at every stroke. Kashinath was drowning in his fire, and no one can imagine his suffering. Alone, Kashinath wandered through the city of Ahmednagar on his way to Paithan. In Ahmednagar, he heard of a great yogi named Kulkarni Maharaj who lived in Rahuri, about 50 kilometers away. Kulkarni Maharaj was also considered to be a great healer, so Kashinath, desperate about his health, instead of going to Paithan, went to Rahuri. Where Kashinath arrived, the yogi received him with great reverence, massaged Kashinath's body with oil, bathed him, and then served him food. While they were eating, the yogi told Kashinath to go to Shirdi in order to meet Sai Baba. Understanding Sai Baba to be a Muslim master, Kashinath did not like the idea of going to a Muslim for help and so rejected the yogi's advice. Later, Kulkarni Maharaj explained to Kashinath, this breathing trouble of yours is not a physical disease. It is a result of advanced yogic practices. Without even trying, you have far exceeded yogis who have been attempting certain practices for years and years. And he repeated, if it is for your best interest if you visit Sai Baba, for he can further advance you on the path. I cannot help you in this way. Only Sai Baba can help you now. However, Kashinath, thinking Sai Baba was a Muslim and having deep Brahmin prejudices, still rejected the yogi's advice. Kashinath left yogi and later, while in the town of Rahuri, met an old wise physician. After Kashinath explained his respiratory condition, the physician advised him to drink only hot water, not cold or room temperature water. Gradually, Kashinath's health did not improve, but the relief was not really from drinking hot water. It was from the singer, who was beckoning to meet him and finally was shining his mercy. Although his breathing ailment was gradually diminishing, Kashinath kept on wandering about Maharashtra, determined to find the singer. In June 1911, Kashinath wanted to see Sadguru Narayan Maharaj again, so he travelled to Bombay. Narayan received Kashinath with great warmth and love, then had him sit beside him. Narayan gave Kashinath pan leaf and betel nut to chew and said, today I have completely colored you inside and out. Now nothing is left. There is no further need of contact or talk between us. your business is finished. But Kashinath was taken aback and said, When will I see you again? Narayan answered, I will come to see you myself, and when I come, I will see you in such a way that I will always be with you. Completely died. Kashinath then returned to the yogi Kulkarni Maharaj in Rahuri, who again urged him to meet Sai Baba. The yogi further explained that he had met the fakir of Shirdi and that Sai Baba was no ordinary guru and that he was above all castes and creeds. He assured Kashinath that Sai Baba was a Sat Purush, a perfect man, inwardly like Narayan Maharaj. This time Kashinath agreed. The inner work that Narayan Maharaj had finished was now in effect. The fakir of Shirdi was then quite old, in his mid-70s, but he had always been the singer guiding Kashinath. It was the day the fakir had patiently waited for 41 years. Unknown to Kashinath, Sai Baba loved him like no other. Kashinath reached Shirdi on the morning of June 27, 1911, and proceeded directly to Sai Baba for his darshan. He then participated in the Aarti ceremony to Sai Baba and ate lunch with the other devotees. In the evening, Kashinath approached the old fakir and asked for his permission to leave. Sai Baba laughed, replying, It is best that you stay here. Stay with me. Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Kashinath answered that he had some important work to attend to. Sai Baba then asked, If you want to go, you may, but return within 8 days. I cannot promise to return within 8 days, replied Kashinath. It may not be possible. Sai Baba assured him that he would, adding, I will see what I can do. And with the old fakir's consent, Kashinath then left Shirdi. Age was wonderstruck. He called, Oh Kashinath, did you not recognize the singer? Why are you leaving him? He has riches to shower upon you for the asking. But Kashinath did not like being in Shirdi. He continued to Kopargaon to meet Brahmachari Maharaj, a Hindu guru. But when he met Brahmachari inquired, Have you been to Shirdi? Kashinath was taken back and replied, Yes, I have been there recently. I had Sai Baba's darshan. Brahmachari reproached him, But your purpose has not been served. It is best if you go back soon. Kashinath disagreed. He did not want to return to Shirdi because he did not like it there. Instead, he stayed in a Hindu temple at Kopargaon, daily visiting Brahmacharya Maharaj. One day, while Brahmacharya was trying to persuade Kashinath that it was important for him to return to Sai Baba again, some visitors arrived in a tonga from Brahmacharya's consultation. These people were on their way to Shirdi, and when they found out that Kashinath had already been there and knew the way, they insisted that he accompany him. Against his wish, Kashinath was persuaded to guide them to Shirdi village. They arrived at Shirdi in the afternoon and walked straight to the mosque for Sai Baba's darshan. The old fakir was very happy to see Kashinath again, and after the darshan, Sai Baba inquired, Kashinath, how many days has it been since I saw you? Kashinath thought for a moment and said, 8 days. Sai Baba said, Do you remember saying that it would not be possible for you to come back within 80 days? Realizing the fakir's foreknowledge, Kashinath said, You're right, Sai. Your ways are beyond my understanding. At the moment, Kashinath finally recognized the singer. Sai's voice was the same as the singer's. He decided to stay near Sai Baba at Shirdi so he would daily attend the Aarti ceremony and take the fakir's darshan. Although he now recognized who the singer was, the singer's divine face was still hidden from his sight, and he longed more than ever to see his face. The old fakir's eyes were about to shine God's mercy and love. After some days, Sai Baba asked Kashinath, Do you have any money to give me as dakshina? From among his loose change, Kashinath selected an old blackened rupee coin and gave it to the fakir. Accepting it, Sai Baba examined the coin and then explained, Look at this coin he has given me. This man purposely chose the blackest coin for me. Kashinath was embarrassed and pleaded, Sai, return the coin, I'll give you another. But the master replied, I want only this coin. Let this black rupee be with me. Later he added, although you have given me this worthless coin, I will see to it that you realize the truth. During his dinner, Kashinath was deeply disturbed and selected a new rupee coin, went back to the mosque. He handed the coin to the old fakir, saying, Sai, it was a grave mistake on my part to give you the black rupee. I have brought you a new one. Please accept it and forgive me. Sai took the coin and he was lying it, trying it in his he was tying it in his cloth bundle. A man named Hari Bhau Chobal came and handed a large wad of rupees to Sai. The old fakir looked angry and demanded more money from Chobal, but he had given all he had. Sai Baba then instructed Chobal to return home immediately and bring back all the money in his possession. The man left quite pleased, for he had been given the opportunity to surrender all his wealth to Sai Baba. Seeing this, Kashinath went to get all the money he had and handed it over to Sai Baba. Daily before Aarti was performed to him, Sai Baba would discourse and dwell on spiritual topics that only those to whom they referred would follow. Kashinath found that most of what Sai spoke about was in regard to him personally and of incidents that had happened in his life. Gradually, Kashinath became convinced that the old fakir was omniscient. In this manner, 2 months passed. Kashinath's personality was such that he did not like to be a burden to anyone, and since he had no money, he wished to leave Shirdi and stop living off what Sai Baba gave. He asked a close disciple named Madhavrao Deshpande to speak with Sai on his behalf and obtain his consent. When Deshpande did so, Sai replied, tell Kashinath that consent to leave will be given when all accounts are settled. Sai Baba was referring to all the Kashinath's karmas. Sometime later, when Kashinath was massaging one of Sai Baba's feet and Deshpande the other, Deshpande again broached the topic of Kashinath's departure. Sai ignored it. At the later time, however, Sai told Deshpande, listen carefully to what I tell you about Kashinath. It does not have to stay here for 1 year or 1.5, but for 4 years. In 4 years, God's grace will descend upon him and all his accounts will be settled. Sai continued, Kashinath has to pass his days alone in Vidorpa temple. Take him there. He should not be disturbed. He should pass his days in the temple quietly. His future is spectacular. There is no one else like him. His value only I know. His merit is such that if the whole world were put on one side and he on the other, he would be greater. Such is his worth. Let him stay in Vidobha's temple in seclusion and quietude. Whatever I have to do for Kashinath, I will do. Deshpande passed on what Sai said to Kashinath, who thought, how could this happen to me? How could I be so fortunate? How could this be true of me? Then he went directly to Sai Baba and pleaded for his consent to leave Shirdi. But the old fakir refused to let him go. Sai Baba was preparing Kashinath internally to stay secluded in the abandoned temple consecrated to Krishna, which Sai Baba called Kandhobas, the Guru's temple. Sai Baba consoled Kashinath. Now you no longer have to be concerned about anything. I know what you are. You are pure gold. I have been after you for many years. What good or bad you have done up until now was in reality done by me. You did not know me, but I know you thoroughly. For years I have had thoughts about you in my heart. There is no need now for you to go back and forth. Stay here with me. Sai told Kashinath, if you are unable to accomplish what I am telling you to do, It will not matter. I myself will buy your ticket and see that you are seated in the train. I will not allow the train to stop anywhere. The train will carry you directly to where I want you to reach. Kashinath became calm as he listened. A devotee from Bombay who was present and overhearing this said, Sai, have you given him everything? Yes, answered Sai Baba. I have given everything to him. What is mine is his. There is no separation or distinction between us. I am entirely responsible for him. Kashinath left soon after to live alone in the Kandoba temple about 200 to 300 yards from Sai Baba's mosque. Thus began 4 years of the most severe penance for Kashinath to endure. The whole day he would stay in the temple, a temple filled with scorpions and snakes, and he would leave only to attend Sai Baba's arti. After some time, however, Sai Baba forbade Kashinath's attendance even there. A devotee named Dada Sahib G.S. Kharpade was sent by Sai Baba to read the book titled Panch Deshi, the five slaves or the five elements to Kashinath, but he had little interest in hearing esoteric wisdom, so the reading of the book stopped. Absorbed in his inner experience, Kashinath had now gone beyond other words. He himself had become the singer, but the glory of the song was yet to manifest. In February 1912, news came of the death of Kashinath's third wife, but he expressed no remorse. Worldly ties could no longer bind him. The penitent was absorbed only on the notes of the song, and he was gaining the secret knowledge to teach this his songs to others. One day Sai Baba visited the temple and said, Stay here, I pervade all existence. There is no one except you. You will find me everywhere. These words from the old fakir consoled Kashinath, who could often be depressed and even think of suicide. Under Sai Baba's instructions, food was brought to Kashinath at the temple by a certain devotee. But after some days, Sai ordered the devotee to stop, since it had not been prepared with love. Kashinath stopped eating, refused any other food brought to him, and began to fast. This fast was to last for 1 more year. During this time, he became completely emancipated, but he also became revered. One of the reverends he was out of reverence, he was named Upasni Maharaj. Due to his Upasna worship and Upas fasting, he became revered as the most dedicated to God. Due to his prolonged fast, the pertinent health weakened and his pulse grew feeble, but Upasni's countenance was always fresh and bright. Devotees of Sai who would bring him food, but he could not eat it. He let it for the dogs and crows to devour. During the year-long fast, the penitent was rude and abusive to anyone who visited him at Kandoba's temple, but acting displeased and refusing all offerings was only a pretext of Upasni's part. He had finally seen the face of the singer. He himself was becoming the song. In his inexpressible ecstasy, he had no thoughts of food, for he had lost connection with his own body. He had become God realized. His wish had come true. Kashinath, the man, was finally dead. The desecrated Kangoba temple was dilapidated and dirty, a nestling place for snakes and scorpions. Upasni had sat naked in its filth while the reptiles and scorpions crawled over and bit his body. He was immune to their stings and bites. Truly, he had to be conscious of his body to survive such conditions. Yet Maharaj underwent such terrible sufferings in the Kandoba temple that several times he contemplated suicide. But Sai Baba's invincible protection saved him each time. Upasni stayed in this strange temple while he was coming down for the god state to to creation consciousness because of science order, oblivious of everything except the singer. During this period of reconnecting with the gross world, Upasni's behavior was strange. On occasion, he would fling a sack cloth over his naked body, leave the temple, and wander in the rural area. At times, he entered the Mahabubi androgynous state. Upasni felt that his body had turned into a woman, so for a short while he acted as if he was a woman. Sometimes he would lend a hand to a lowly sweepers cleaning the streets and sewers. He also racked a plow like a bullock in the farmer's fields. One time he bathed a destitute leper on the street and washed the man's deceased clothes, later drinking the bathwater. Once he lay down beside a dead horse and kissed and patted it while cows devoured the carcass. While in Kandoba's temple, Upasni had various occult experiences and visions. During his phase of realization, he suddenly found two giants in the temple with him. Frightened, he tried to escape, but they grabbed him. One giant took his head and broke up his skull, while the other pulled out his brain and flung it open. Then the other poured light into his skull. This light was of Satchit Ananda, infinite knowledge, power, and bliss. This was the final death of Kashinath and the realization of Upasni as the eternal all. Gradually, over the period of 1 year, the singer began acquiring the knowledge to teach others to sing. Upasni was coming down to creation consciousness, and on regaining body consciousness, Sai Baba sent a devotee with coffee and food to him. The fast of 1 year ended. From then on, Upasni ate and drank regularly in small amounts until he regained full gross consciousness. Between 1912 and 1914 was Upasni's period of regaining creation consciousness. Like an ascetic yogi, he lived in that Hindu temple infested with scorpions and snakes during those years. By 1914, he had fully regained normal human consciousness. With the grace of Sai Baba, he regained consciousness of the three spheres, Triloka, mental, subtle, and gross, after having attained the consciousness of God. He was now always called Upasni Maharaj, a Sadguru, a living perfect master. The singer was perfect and could make others hear the song. Sai Baba declared in his own devotees that Upasni was perfect and could send people to him to listen to the divine melody of voice. The singer had attained the knowledge of Sahaj, everything, and he had become a all-knowing and thus all-powerful. A doctor named Chidamba Ram Pillai had observed Upasni at the Kandoba temple during those years. One day in 1930, Upasni had predicted the start of the First World War to Dr. Pillai, and when the war began a year later, the doctor's faith in Upasni was strengthened. Afterward, he would visit Upasni and care for him. Dr. Pillai had a friend named Dr. Ganpat Rao who lived in Sindhi, a town near Nagpur in Central Asia. Upasni had told Dr. Pillai that he wanted to leave the temple, and Pillai suggested he stay at Ganpat's home. Upasni agreed, but cautioned that no one should find out about their plans. At midnight on July 25, 1914, Upasni and Dr. Pillai took a train to Shirdi. This was the first time Upasni had left Shirdi after 3 years, and the villagers were saddened to discover Upasni had abandoned the temple. When some went to Sai Baba and asked him what had happened to Upasni, he sarcastically replied, "Dr. Pillai has hidden him." Upasni had warned Dr. Pillai to keep his whereabouts in Shirdi a secret, and thus Sai Baba's comment was taken as a joke. One woman, Durga Bhai Karmikar, a high-caste Brahmin widow, was especially saddened by Upasni's disappearance, for she would daily bring meals to him at the temple, and he would refer to her as his spiritual mother. To her great joy, Upasni sent Dr. Pillai back to Shirdi to bring Durga Bhai to him in Shirdi, where she stayed with him to cook his meals. Upasni had undergone terrible physical suffering in Kandhoba's temple, and his digestive system was particularly affected, and he had developed a severe case of hemorrhoids for which he needed an operation. Although he refused any anesthetic during the surgery, he went through it serenely without grimacing in pain. After this operation, Upasni gave up ordinary clothes and began wrapping a guinea sack around his waist, and his humble attire he wore through the rest of his life. From Sindhi, Upasni travelled to Nagpur and stayed at Dr. Pillai's house there. Many would come for his darshan, and Upasni would discourse to them in a sweet yet profound manner. While in Nagpur, he refused to eat in Dr. Pillai's home. He wandered out and daily into the streets of the city begging for his food and visited many houses. It is not recorded where Upasni had any contact with Tajuddin Baba, who lived in Nagpur at that time. Dr. Pillai's brother Chinna Swami took Upasni to Kharagpur in early October 1914. Although none was told about Upasni Maharaj's divine status, automatically people started coming for his darshan, attracted by the audience of his unique personality. During this period, Upasni's external appearance was more austere. For he was quite negligent of his body's cleanliness or comfort. He would lie in filthy hovels and beg for food with an earthen pot. He would and defecate in the same pot, and after washing it. However, people from all walks of life were attracted to his divine beauty, because despite all outward appearances, this naked man was a God conscious master who possessed the divine love to quench anyone's inner spiritual thirst. After staying in Chinna's home during February 1915, Upasni moved to the poor residence of a man named Namdev Mahar and his wife Bhagu. There Upasni stayed in the cow stable adjoining their humble board. This poor couple had profound love for Upasni, though they belonged to the lower caste of Harijans, untouchable, orthodox, high caste Brahmins would visit their house for the Maharaj's darshan. For this incident, it can be evidence that power Upasni's divine personality had, compelling the indoctrinate, prejudiced Brahmins to ignore the rigid tenets of their religious training. For a Brahmin to enter an untouchable's house is very rare. In, in this poor Harijan locality, where the wealthy Hindus would come before Upasni, he would place in front of them something from Namdev's poor furnishings, telling them, "Worship this because God is in everything." One time Upasni was helping a blacksmith in his work when some rich visitors came to pay homage to him. Upasni placed a hammer before them and told them, "Bow down to this because God is in everything." They did, and he was pleased. Another time Upasni placed a worn shoe on a table and asked a woman, "Perform arti to this shoe because God is in everything." So not only did so, but also took the shoe back with her as Sadguru's prasad to offer worship it at home. Although a Sadguru at this time, Upasni's outer condition in Kharagpur was similar to that of the Brahmi Booth. He appeared dazed and showed no bodily effects of gross consciousness. In this picture, on this page number 78, there's a picture of Upasni Maharaj in 1930s, one of the favorite photographs of himself, because it is said that the image of Vidhoba or Krishna is being shining radiantly through his heart. One time, some Anglo-Indian boys in the town found him in a dazed state and hung a garland of old shoes around his neck, and even tried to humiliate him by thinking him to be no more than a madman. For days Upasni wandered about the town with a garland of old shoes, resisting all attempts to remove it. Finally, some of the elders took it off and replaced the shoes with a flower garland. Upasni would sternly tell people, unless you are ready to eat crab, how can you aspire for spirituality? By this time, by this he meant that one, he had to endure untold suffering to become oblivious to both pleasure and pain, good and bad, cleanliness and dirt. Upasni Maharaj always taught that God is in everything, the good, bad, beautiful, ugly, clean, and unclean. A man once brought an elaborate chair made of expensive sandalwood for Upasni to sit on and be worshipped in. Upasni reprimanded him, saying, "Burn this chair and perform your puja before the fire." The man accepted the ashes as his prasad. Naked Sadhguru wore only a guinea sack about his loins, yet he was accepted by all castes and faiths. Once entering a mosque, Upasni sat comfortably talking with several Muslims about Muhammad. He would also visit the homes of Christian and Zoroastrian and talk about Jesus or Zoroaster. Also in Kharagpur was a man named Chandu Baba who was referred to as a Siddha, one who possesses occult power. Chandu had undergone certain spiritual practices called Siddha Purush, and he would also roam about dressed naked except for a cotton lion cloth. At any time and anywhere, Chandu would unwrap the lion cloth and sling it over his shoulders, walking about uninhabitably naked. One day, Upasni and Chandu encountered each other on a street. Both naked men started to stared at each other for a few moments and then Chandu walked away. Chandu was an advanced ascetic of the subtle planes and he would frequently send people of Upasni's darshan. After spending 10 months among the untouchables in Kharagpur, without informing anyone, Upasni quietly returned to Nagpur. The devotees were shocked and wept at his sudden disappearance. On reaching Nagpur, Upasni sent a telegram to comfort them, but they had become devoted to him and felt the pangs of separation at his absence. The British authorities, however, did not like naked sadhus or holy men roaming in the streets, and once while Upasni was in Nagpur, a policeman and his superior accosted him. "You will have to put on your more clothes if you want to walk in the public streets," they warned him, "or you will be arrested." Upasni looked quite innocent and asked one of them, "Don't I already walk about in clothes, officer?" The policeman looked at him again and he was astounded to see Upasni robed in a long yellow silk religious gown called a pitambar. He bowed to Upasni and asked his pardon and left. During this incident, the policeman's superior saw Upasni naked except for a guinea sack, but was afraid to arrest him. After a short while in Nagpur, Upasni returned to Shirdi and again inhabited Kandoba's temple. During this period, the austere tone of penance surrounding the place disappeared, and he was replaced by a festive atmosphere as his devotees began to gather in greater numbers. End of page number 79. We will take a pause here, and with Baba's grace and his blessings and his dictate, we will again read the story of our Lord tomorrow. Avtar Meher Baba ki jai, Avtar Meher Baba ki jai, Avtar Meher